here with us today for our community update. There's a couple of reasons that we're doing this today, and it's based on your feedback. So as many of you know, I joined the team here at United Way back in August, and when I came on board, we were already underway for a strategic planning process. And part of that strategic planning process, we went ahead and did some stakeholder listening sessions. And part of what we heard from folks was that you wanted more timely and consistent communication from us, not just related exclusively to the allocation process, but anything that we were engaged in here that might impact our funded partners and our other partners. Certainly, we knew that you wanted a better understanding of our allocation process, which we're going to talk a little bit about today. And then there's an opportunity for convening around meaningful topics. So, in the history of United Way a number of years ago, there was the Directors Council that would meet. Jim Clemens, who's been retired for a number of years, was sort of the driving force behind making sure those things were happening. And it's been quite a while since we've had that framework. So when we brought together many of our funded partners a few months ago, we had said, part of our vision here at United Way, our mission is to measurably improve lives in Lake County. And we certainly recognize that there's a lot of folks that are engaged in that work that aren't necessarily part of our funded partners. And so we wanted to be more inclusive in having those conversations. So we're still looking to create that framework for bringing folks together. But what we heard from you is that you wanted it to be around meaningful topics, not information that could be simply shared in an email. And that's part of why we're using this hybrid model this afternoon to bring you together, but be cognizant of people's time. So for the agenda today, one of the things I want to walk everybody through very, very quickly. So please, for those of you that see strategic plan and are getting a little bit itchy about how long is this meeting going to go, I'm going to walk you through just our goals and objectives quickly. But that strategic plan that was finalized and adopted by our board back in April really is driving much of the work that we're engaged in right now. And so I want to be able to share that with you. Many of you that are funded partners did receive an email last week that explained to you that we've went through a recent internal reorganization. I'd like to walk us through that and just explain what that means to folks that are funded partners and how that will look with regards to communication to and from our office and who you'll want to engage with. The allocation process itself, share the results. Those are certainly always on our website. One of the things that we heard in the listening sessions was that folks were saying, we don't really know when the money goes and where it goes to. We've always put it there. I don't know that people have known that that's where they could find it always. So we'll walk through it quickly today and then talk about what our current review process is. Talk about our campaign, which definitely has a direct impact on our funded partners that are on the call, our current car raffle, our kickoff. We have a legal access panel coming up, and then the Hero Fest. So when we met with our stakeholders, like I mentioned, when I came on board, the strategic planning process was well underway. So the board steering committee or subcommittee for the strategic plan had already been engaged in some focus groups, had talked to community partners. And as I came on board, we started to finish up that work. As a result of what we heard from our stakeholders in large listening sessions and in independent interviews, we narrowed our work into sort of 4 buckets, if you will. So our 4 goals that are going to guide us moving forward. Our first is to ensure that the community understands how United Way Lake County impacts the community. We want to address the greatest needs in the community. We want to make sure that we're operating effectively and efficiently to advance our mission. And we want to continue to manage and grow our resources to invest where there's the greatest need. So under image and visibility, which certainly when we sort of sifted through the data, if you will, was the one area where people felt like we had the greatest opportunity. We want to ensure that all of our stakeholders understand how United Way of Lake County impacts the community. So one of the things that we heard time and time again was that people understood or recognized our brand, knew that we did good work. But if you were to ask like specifically what were we doing in Lake County, a lot of folks weren't able to answer that question. We certainly know that that's something we need to do a better job of. So in part of that goal, what we're going to do is define and share our unique value proposition, the sort of why of United Way of Lake County. And many of you that are on the call today have been asked to share why it is that you see Lake County or United Way of Lake County being important and relevant so that we can use that to help tell our story. And so for those of you that have already been participating, we say thank you. We want to leverage our marketing efforts to increase our visibility, engage our partners to share our message, and then ensure our materials are current and relevant. I apologize, it's a little lag. There we go. So for impact, we want to make sure that we're addressing the greatest needs in the community. And in order to do that, we want to have a transparent and informed allocation process. And we'll spend some time this afternoon talking about that. And this really is right now where a lot of our time and energy is going, because certainly it is the allocation process that is in a tangible way allows us to visibly improve lives here in Lake County. We want to guarantee that our work is tied to our greatest needs, leverage volunteers to serve the community, convene stakeholders to address community need, and then deliver programs that measurably impact the community. And again, this is where the call to action will be at the end of today's conversation. For those of you that are participating and any of the other people that are on the call today that are interested in this work, we certainly have opportunities for folks to engage with us as we talk about how to make these adjustments. Under governance and operations, we want to be able to operate effectively and efficiently to advance our mission. So we want to ensure that the volunteers, staff, and board reflect the community we serve. Many of you that are on the call that lead organizations know that one of our challenges is to make sure that we have the diverse stakeholder representation at that governance level. And so that's something we're really focused on right now. Establishing a board development framework. Like I said, this strategic plan was adopted back in April. And so our first few months under the strategic plan were really focused here on governance and operations and trying to strengthen an already very strong board. Ensure staffing needs meet the needs of the organization. So this particular objective is what drove our reorganization, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, and then create volunteer systems that meet the needs of the organization. We have two affinity groups, our Emerging Leaders and our Women United groups. And those two groups really are the foundation of our volunteer network. And we want to make sure that we're doing a better job of keeping them engaged in the broad initiatives that take place under United Way of Lake County, not just the things that they have focused on in recent years. Financial health, for all of you that are on the call, this is a focus for every single organization that is doing this work. We want to continue to manage and grow our resources to invest where there's the greatest need. We need to create a development plan. We're in the middle of doing that right now. Position our campaign for success. Certainly many of you that are participating on the call today have been vital to helping us have successful campaigns year over year. Diversifying our funding sources, formalizing our fundraising efforts, intentionally leveraging our board to increase the donor base, and then attracting and retaining new donors. So I'm guessing for the vast majority of people that are on the call, we could take this set of objectives and drop it into any one of the organizations that's here today, and those are things that you are all working on as well. So part of our strategic plan was for us to go through sort of a work analysis and look at how we're engaged in our work and if there was a way to do it different or better. Those of you that have a history of working here in Lake County know that United Way has changed a lot over the last 10 years. And as a result, as people have left and positions haven't been refilled, internally people were asked to wear multiple hats. And so we really took a chance to step back and say, okay, if we really wipe the slate clean and reorganize this work in the way that it made the most sense, what would it look like? And that's what we went ahead and did. So many of you have been working with Zach over the last number of years in the allocation process when it comes time to get the money to where it's supposed to land. Zach's new title is Chief Financial Officer. He certainly is still doing the same work that he's been doing, but the title is a more accurate reflection of what he does. Jean Sensi is now our development director. Many of you on the call have been working with Jean on two fronts. One, as she has led our fundraising efforts, and then she has led our community impact efforts. Those are really two separate jobs, and it hasn't allowed her the time and energy to invest in any one area as fully as she would like to. So positioning her as development director exclusively really gives her an opportunity to showcase her talents and help us raise the dollars that are so needed here. Tammy is our marketing and communications director. Those of you that have been to our events over the past few years or have bought raffle tickets recognize that Tammy is incredibly gifted on the event side and has been just a powerhouse in helping us raise dollars with those raffles. But we recognize that our events and our volunteers are a job in and of itself. So in order to give Tammy the bandwidth necessary to take on some of those initiatives related to the strategic plan under our visibility area, we're asking her to focus exclusively on marketing and communications and providing her that bandwidth by the position that we've created. David will continue on as our community impact manager. He has done work in that area all along, but he's really going to take the lead on this now. So those of you that have been accustomed to sending your agreements back to Jean and talking to Jean about the allocation process and when the portal opens up and all of that, that's now going to be handled in partnership between David and I. And then our player to be named later, we're literally interviewing today before and after this discussion. We have a position out for an event and volunteer coordinator. So someone who could be that thread amongst all of our events. I'm sure that many of you have recognized that over time we have been adding events. So, we have our kickoff, and then we're going to have the Emerging Leaders Golf Outing. Then there's Winterfest and 4 Under 40, and we have the Celebrity Server and the annual meeting. And they've been led by separate staff members and volunteers. And we sort of felt that if we had one person who was the point person on all of this, we could set consistent standards across the board for each one of those events and provide a dedicated staff person to our volunteers who've been so important to having those events be a success. So that's the team right now. I would be remiss not to mention part of our work analysis and just trying to be good stewards of the dollars that are donated to us. We did make the difficult decision to eliminate our receptionist position. And as a result, Peggy has not been with the team since the beginning of June. But I do want to make sure that we mention that and say, truly we're grateful for all of the time and energy she gave to us and what an asset she was while she was here. So our allocations, again, as I mentioned, one of the things that we heard from our stakeholders was, folks were saying we're not sure where the money ends up going. So again, this is on our Facebook page. It is a process that for those of you that aren't funded partners, just really quickly, when the portal opens and our partners put in their applications, there is a group of community volunteers that are tasked with reviewing those applications, talking to representatives from each of the organizations, and then making the decision of how the dollars will be invested. For the last few years, it has been a closed process. So what that means is it's not open to anybody to apply. There was a vetting process a number of years ago, and as a result, only certain organizations with specific programs related to our 3 areas, health, education, and financial stability, have had the opportunity to apply for these dollars year over year. Again, we're in a review process right now, so we'll talk a little bit about that and what the future looks like, but that's the framework that we've been operating under. So you can see the total number of dollars that were invested in each of the 3 areas and what organizations that those want to in what amounts. Certainly, I'm not going to read through this entire list, but this is then the information that we use to anchor back when we talk about our impact and the total number of services that are provided in the community and try to help paint the picture for our donors. If an employee campaign, when we're helping them to set goals, we can share with them if your employee campaign raises X number of dollars, we try to convert it into the number of services that are provided because you all give us the data that says, hey, thank you, you gave us $18,000 and as a result of that, we did X, Y, and Z. So that's how the math shakes out when you hear us giving presentations and sort of telling the story. New this year, the board, and I'm very grateful that they have given us this opportunity. The board has went ahead and identified that we used to have the panels that were meant for responsive funding, and we haven't had those panels for a number of years. So what has happened is the way we budget our dollars, we have the allocated funds that are driven by the community. And then if we want to invest dollars again, we're going to wait an entire calendar year for people to apply through the portal and ask, and then we invest. So the board recognizes that throughout the year, people do reach out to us and ask for additional support that isn't tied necessarily to the community allocation process. And so we've put in a formal process for that, and we're referring to it as our sort of responsive investments. And so there's a pot of money each year that I have the ability, with the board's permission, to invest back into the community. Again, has to be related to one of our 3 areas of focus, has to be an immediate need, and we can go ahead and put those dollars back into the community. So just as a point of information sharing, we did go ahead this year and invest $30,000 into the 211 program that Lifeline has been operating for a number of years. I'm sure many of you on the call remember a time when 211 was housed within United Way and totally operated here. We haven't had a relationship related to 211 for quite some time, but we recognize that that's probably the best example of a program in Lake County where we talk about what can we do in collaboration that we can't do independent of one another. So we wanted to make sure that they had the dollars necessary to remain strong and have trained navigators to help guide folks that are making those calls. And then we did make a $10,000 investment into the Back to School Bash that will be taking place on August 5th. So this certainly isn't, I don't want to paint the picture that everybody should, as soon as we're off this call, shoot me an email about, the next project you have where you need extra money, because I feel that could be a little bit overwhelming. But I certainly do want to make sure that everybody's aware that if you do have an immediate need, if there's something that's happening that you weren't able to predict for, we are trying to position ourselves to be more responsive and to be able to be a little bit more agile in our own operation. So if there's something that you'd like to have a conversation about, or you feel that there's an emerging need that we need to be aware of, please don't hesitate to reach out. And again, outside of the dollars that we invest, just wanted to give everybody a quick update and say thank you to David, who has led these initiatives the past couple of years. So Day of Caring and Feed Lake County both were literally within the same 2 weeks at the end of June. We had a total of 23 projects adopted by 26 volunteer groups. So that was over 250 volunteers that came together. And then we distributed about 66,000 pounds of food in May and June. Part of that was purchased food from the Feed Lake County campaign, and then part of it was the donated food from the Feed Lake County campaign. So the thing I would share about Day of Caring is that we're looking at the numbers before COVID, and we're not anywhere near where we were before COVID in the total number of projects or total number of volunteers. And so we're doing a little bit of an analysis right now to get a better feel for why that is. We certainly know that there are a number of businesses in the community that have said, we just can't afford to let people go for a chunk of the day right now because we're so understaffed. We've heard that. But we also recognize that for some of our larger partners, their move towards sort of their corporate social responsibility is they're organizing their own volunteer initiatives separate from us. And we just want to get a handle on, how many of those types of activities are happening, and what should our reasonable goals be for Day of Caring and helping to connect One of the things that's currently under consideration is moving Day of Caring from the last week of summer. We don't know if that summer date is also a challenge for folks as they're planning vacations and that sort of thing, and aligning it back into October with the National Day of Service. So again, as we talk about the changes that we're looking at for the allocation process, if any of you have feedback regarding Day of Caring or Feed Lake County, please don't hesitate to send that along. So one of the things that came through strong and loud in our listening sessions were people's conversations around our allocation process, specifically not knowing what the criteria was that was used to make these determinations, concerns about, are the folks that are actually making the decisions, are they grounded in the information that they need to be able to make informed decisions? And, I don't know that at any point any real effort had been made to sort of share that information broadly, but that information was always shared within the group that was making those decisions, if that makes sense. So when someone would sort of raise their hand to say, I want to be a part of the allocation process, they were given the framework. So the folks that were most closely involved, I think, have a good understanding, but certainly many of the folks that were putting the information up into the portal felt like once they submitted their application, it was sort of squishy to them about what happens next. So what we've done is, under our bylaws, we have a number of working committees. And I think, with COVID and some of the changes that were happening here internally, those committees hadn't met for a bit. So we've reconvened all of our committees. And one of those is our Community Impact Committee, which is currently being chaired by one of our board members, Carrie Bliss. And part of that Community Impact Committee is to look at the allocation process. So currently serving on the committee, we do have members of our board. We have a couple of agency representatives, and we have folks that have participated in the allocation process most recently. But this is the real call to action today, is we certainly want this conversation to be broader. We want as many voices to be heard as possible. We want to make sure that the allocation process that we have developed and that we implement is one that not only are we proud of and can stand by, but that everybody feels that they understand, and that when they're talking about United Way, that they're able to talk about our allocation process in a way that they're confident in how it operates. So to that end, we have surveyed our funded agency partners, and most all of you, as I looked through the people that were logging in, most all of you did go ahead and take time to fill out that survey. If you did not yet and would still like to provide your feedback, I would encourage you to go ahead. If you need the link again, shoot me an email at the end of this and I will send that back over to you. But we did reach out to all of our funded agency partners to ask them about their experience in submitting their application and then the process after. We went ahead and surveyed the Community Impact Committee members, so the folks that were actually making the decisions, and asked them, did they feel comfortable in the amount of training that they received? Did they understand what the community needs were? Did the criteria that was being used to evaluate the application in front of them, did they feel that it was aligned? Did they have all the information they needed to make an informed decision? So we've gathered that information and are starting to unpack that. As a result of some of the things that we've already discussed, there's some immediate changes. And so those of you that are receiving funding from us and have received your letter of agreement, you saw a reference to two big changes. One is that we're going to formalize and bring back the mid-year review. So in the past couple of years, the process has been when you apply, and again, this has been sort of a result of us being in a closed system, and it made sense. So when the portal opened up and you applied, we asked you to share all of your results from the prior year, but we weren't really checking in between. And the mid-year review isn't meant to be a gotcha or try to catch people not doing what they said they were going to do with the money. It's meant to provide us an opportunity to have a conversation about, are the dollars doing what you hope that the dollars would do? Were they enough? Are you able to move the needle in the outcome areas that you were discussing? We do not want to create a model or a system that makes people have to spend more time writing about the work they're doing than doing the work that they're doing. It is not meant to be cumbersome. It is not meant to be extra. It's meant to have value for both of us. And that's why it's incredibly important as many of our agency partners that are available can participate in helping to develop this framework. Because again, we want to do something that's meaningful for both parties. And I think we can only be successful in doing that if we have broad representation. And then the other piece is David has been starting to get this scheduled and will be reaching out to folks. We'd like to invite every one of our funded partners in to be able to present to the board. I think it's important for a number of reasons. One, certainly we want the board to understand where the dollars are being invested, but I feel strongly that our board members shouldn't simply be advocates for United Way of Lake County, and certainly they are, but I want them to be advocates for every one of the folks that are engaged in doing this work. And I think the only way to ensure that they are is to be able to have an opportunity to meet you folks and hear what you're doing. So that's part of the motivation behind that. So those two things are going to happen immediately. Longer term, we know there's going to be some changes made in the application process. We know there's going to be changes made in how we look at the rubric, if you will, so the criteria for assessing the application. There's definitely going to be some changes regarding the representation. I think, we are incredibly fortunate that Gwen Corbin, we were talking, I think Gwen has literally been involved in the allocation process for like 30 years. So she has historically seen how things have changed and evolved. But she also comes through the lens of having run an agency herself. We had Leah this year from the Wycliffe Family Resource Center. And I think having people that are doing the work and are funded partners, it's not a bad thing to have them at the table. Now, certainly they're going to recuse themselves when it comes time to make decisions about funding related to their organizations, but they're able to provide a lens and be able to share the impact of these programs in a way that other people aren't going to. So I again encourage you to stay a part of this conversation, and if you want to have a role in the actual process, we want to make that happen. And then the funding cycle. So you'll note, if you were one of the folks that were invited to fill out the application, we did ask you, is the once a year funding, does that work for you? Would you prefer a 2-year cycle or a 3-year cycle? And I will just want to take this moment because it was one person's response where I was like, oh gosh, I didn't realize that the question could be interpreted that way. So the way one person read that was like, if we went to a 3-year funding cycle, that we would just allocate dollars, like say this year in 2024, we'd allocate dollars, and then there'd be no allocation in 2025 or 2026. And so when we're talking about a 2-year or 3-year cycle, what that means is if your agency, we say, is getting $50,000 in 2024 and we're doing a 2-year cycle, your agency would have an allocation of that $50,000 again in 2025. I think, in speaking to some of the other United Ways, so many of them are on 2-year cycles at this point. And part of that is the commitment back to our partners to not make life harder. So, again, the sharing of the data and the updates is still continuing, but knowing for 2 years what you can count on helps you in your own budgeting process, doesn't take more time and energy away from you to have to go through this every year. And I think the other piece for us internally is it holds our feet to the fire. If we go ahead to a 2-year process, then what we're saying to our next campaign chair is we've already committed to the community that we're going to invest X number of dollars. So it is, our responsibility to raise those dollars. So like I said, this is where our focus is right now, is in improving this allocation process. And it is incredibly important to us to have more voices participating. So you'll hear me probably 3 more times before we get done say the call to action is making sure that we have the representation. And this isn't an invitation exclusively to the people who are funded partners. I know on the call today, we have other folks that maybe were funded before. We have other community partners that have never been funded and may never be, but certainly have an interest in the work that we're doing. So again, this is an open invitation. Right now for the campaign, as many of you know, we have been the recipient of a very generous donation from Mentor of Nissan. They have donated a car for us to raffle off and have allowed us to raffle the Nissan Sentra, or the recipient can also choose the $15,000 cash option. We have been sort of slowly rolling that out, but now here in the month of July and August, we're going to sort of kick up our advertising a bit. So again, if any of you are in a position to help us share the flyer or promote the sale of the car, we would appreciate it. Our kickoff will be August 30th at Springbrook Gardens in Mentor. A big thank you to Ken Flipiak and his team at Mentor. They're allowing us to use the space as part of their donation to us. At that kickoff is where we'll draw the tickets. We'll have the winner identified. So we're going to draw our 10 finalists on August 25th, but we're going to go ahead and have the 10 finalists there at our kickoff to see who wins the car. The kickoff will be for the campaign that's being led by Rick Selby, who's the managing partner at Dworkin and Bernstein, and he is this year's campaign chair, and we're very excited about having him at the helm. I think he's going to bring a different type of energy to our campaign, and he's certainly excited to get started. We're going to have our full day retreat on August 25th at the Holden University Center. If we haven't reached out yet, we will be reaching out to a number of you. We have not done a full campaign retreat in a number of years. So in the morning, we'll be having Lake Tran take us around to visit a number of our funded partners to make sure that we're trying to connect the need and the folks that are doing this good work with the people that will be helping to raise the money this year through the campaign. And then when we come back over to the Holden Center, and again, a thank you to Lakeland for being supportive and providing us the space. When we come back over to the Holden Center, we're going to go over the recent community needs assessment with our cabinet members. We're going to go over some of the data related to the fundraising efforts from last year, and then we're going to use the afternoon to plan to put some action steps together about how we can grow our campaign for this year. I would share with you the campaign goal right now if I knew what it was. We're leaving that up to our campaign chair and his cabinet on the 25th. So on the 30th, when we announce it, it'll be a direct result of the work that they've done on the 25th. As many of you know, or maybe you don't know, one of our divisions in recent years has been the nonprofit division. And the focus of the nonprofit division is certainly to help promote an employee campaign within your own organization, help us identify, are there any other nonprofits that have either had small campaigns or no campaigns, and if you can leverage your own personal relationship to help us have a conversation with them to see if there's a way to get them involved, but also to be sort of on that speaker series when we have an opportunity to go in person, and you all can appreciate this just from your own work. There's less and less of those opportunities to go in person, but if you are willing to have a client testimonial on video, or if you yourself are willing to speak to how United Way helps your organization advance its mission, certainly would love to have you participate. But before I go and start knocking on doors to see who would like to be a part of the campaign cabinet representing our nonprofit sector, if any of you that are on the call are interested in participating, please give me a call or shoot me an email, and we'll go ahead and get you all set. Just in terms of sharing information about upcoming events, I'm hoping that a number of you are aware of Hero Fest. So Hero Fest was an effort that started 2 years ago. One of our board members had championed that after a personal experience with a family member who was a first responder who had a mental health crisis. And what Hero Fest has become is a way to say thank you to our first responders. And we had the opportunity to partner and bring Hero Fest sort of under our umbrella. And it helps link us both with our first responders in a way to say thank you, but hopefully strengthens our relationship with first responders to help them become supporters of United Way. It will be Sunday, August 20th at Classic Park. The first responders get to come in with their families. They have a free day at the park. They have a meal. Their kids can play putt-putt, and there's some raffle baskets, 50-50, that sort of thing. Certainly, if any of you would like to help us in a volunteer capacity, there's lots of opportunities to volunteer. Wear your agency shirt, give an opportunity for you to promote yourselves. If you're interested in being there, please let me know. And then we're very excited. So Dworkin had reached out to us and asked if they could have an opportunity to speak to some of our partners who might work closely with families from the Hispanic Latino population, because they had a couple of lawyers who specialized in that area. And so we reached out to a lawyer who's been a friend and supporter of ours, who wasn't from Dworkin, just to have a conversation to say, hey, we want to make sure that we share this information, but we're also concerned, we don't want to look like we're promoting one for-profit business over everybody else, and what does this look like? And so he recommended that we connect with legal aid, and so just all of the pieces sort of fell together. So we're very excited to do this in partnership with legal aid, who then talked to us about, you should really reach out to Judge Galkowski, who again has been a friend of United Way for years. So we have this free legal panel presentation, which we're calling Access to Justice. It's completely free to anybody on your staff within your organization who would like to learn more. The only thing you need to do is shoot me an email so we make sure that we have lunch for you. If you don't shoot me an email and you show up, we're not going to turn you away. I'm just not going to be able to feed you. So please make sure you take time to let me know. As of yesterday, we were about 15 people that are going to be attending. So excited about that as something that's a first effort. So again, if this is your first time seeing this information, you'll be able to find it on our website and on our Facebook page, and you can share it with your staff. And again, please don't feel like you're limited. If you want to have 3 or 4 people from your team come out, they're more than welcome to do that. Things that I just wanted to touch on that I think I didn't want to leave off. The last time we had gathered as a directors council, we had talked about the directors council meetings, and then there was a conversation about, well, what does this look like with the nonprofit center or the institute at Lakeland? And I think my understanding is that they will continue going forward having their meetings, but it's open to everybody in Lake and Geauga County. So we're going to continue to schedule, and I don't know, and that's why I put it in quotes, that they're necessarily directors council meetings. Not that I'm saying it's any staff. I just don't want people to feel like the conversations are exclusive or only for those folks that are funded partners. Again, I'm cognizant, as we all are, that there's so many people invested in this work, and I believe that there's an opportunity to have conversations in partnership to drive some of these initiatives that we're not going to be able to do just by ourselves. So we're going to go ahead and move forward with those council meetings. And this is the other thing that I think is incredibly important for me to say, is that if it doesn't work for you, if you're a funded partner and you're like, I am already going to 1 million meetings, I can't put one more on my schedule, or I don't want to do something where I'm not getting a return on the investment of my time, no harm, no foul. I don't want people to feel like there is a carrot and a stick. Your ability to apply for funds and how funds are allocated, there's never a checkbox on the rubric that says, how responsive were you to coming to meetings for United Way of Lake County? So again, I just want to be clear that if we set this calendar, that if it's not of value to you, you don't have to try to make it because you think somehow you'll be penalized for not making it. The Feed Lake County quarterly meetings, David has set that calendar up. I think one of the things that we recognize is that, there's over 30 food banks, food pantries in Lake County that we work directly with and distribute food to. The biggest distribution certainly is in the spring with the Feed Lake County initiative after we've collected food from our local businesses. But we receive calls throughout the year when people are short, the holidays, businesses who have things, use us as a touch point for that. And so when we brought everybody together this year to talk about, what were the trends that they were seeing and the increase in need, and we started sharing about the reduction in the SNAP benefits, it became clear really quickly that the vast majority of the food banks that are being operated in Lake County are operated by volunteers that have a day job and aren't necessarily tied in to many of the meetings and discussions that the people on this call get tied into. And so what that means is sometimes they're not getting the information at all. So we had folks in the room that when we talked about the SNAP benefits and the third distribution being eliminated, they didn't know that. We also recognized when we said, hey, what can we do to help you? Some of the folks said, we'd love to have a printed sheet that shows us all of the food banks, where they're located, what time they're open. And the response was sort of like, well, you can look that up on 211. And there were members of the group in the room that didn't realize that they could do that. So we know that that's a real opportunity to help strengthen the capacity around a really powerful group of volunteers that are the front door for many of our most vulnerable into a broader network of services. So we want to make sure that we're having conversations with them and positioning them with what they need in order to be impactful. So the first meeting that we will have with the Feed Lake County group coming up, we're in the middle of trying to coordinate that, but we want to do it as a computer training in partnership with Lifeline and 211 to make sure all of those folks have the skills they need to access that database. The early literacy initiative, last year we brought our librarians together to talk about, would they be interested in having this conversation? Our Women United group is very invested in early literacy. It's where they want to put their time and energy. And we right now have a young woman who is she's a graduate of the Leadership Lake County Youth Program and a Harvey High School alumni. She's a Lake County resident and she works at the VA, but she's working on her master's degree and she wants to do something around early literacy. So she has pulled together a sort of environmental scan, if you will, of Northeast Ohio, other communities that have taken on early literacy through collaborative partnerships. And she would like to present her findings as part of her master's program to a broader group of people and then have the conversation about, is it something that Lake County is interested in exploring? So as a follow-up to this presentation, there will be an email going out with a doodle poll asking folks if they would be willing to listen to her presentation, and then following her presentation, if they would like to be involved in that work. So that doodle will go out. I'm assuming what we'll do is something very similar to this in terms of she can present remotely, people can log in, and then after you see the results of her scan, we can have a conversation about what that looks like moving forward. And then the only other thing that I'd like to keep on everybody's radar, Youth United, we ran that program this year for the first time since COVID. I think it's a fantastic program. I'm certainly biased because both my sons have went through it and my niece has been through it. And, I just think that it's powerful. And that was long before I had anything to do formally with the organization. But we've been running it in the winter. And I think we recognize that it's challenging for some of the kids. We don't want to run into weather challenges, and it probably makes more sense for us to run Youth United in the fall when we're kicking off the campaign, especially if we're trying to have campaigns inside of the schools. So the Youth United program that used to run starting in February this year, we're going to be running that in the fall, so in September and October. It'll still be the same model in terms of the kids will have $5,000 to distribute funds, but it's just going to be a little bit earlier. So I swore when I looked at this, I thought to myself, I'll be done in 30 minutes and then people can ask half an hour worth of questions if they'd like. And I'm looking at the time and thinking when I turn my camera back on, if anybody will be left. But we do want to know what you think. And I hate to make it so open-ended, and I struggled with this and thought, do I send a Google form out? But I don't want to send a Google form out. And it's not because I don't want to go through the work. I do really want to open it up to, listening to these changes, allocation, the things that you've already shared through the listening sessions. If everybody could take a few minutes, over the next week, just to send me an email to say, this seems like the direction we were hoping for. I'm really concerned about this. I heard you were saying you're going to make this change, but have you thought about the implications on X, Y, and Z? I really do want to hear that so that we can blend it into what we're doing. But this is like, again, the next ask and the last ask. I really do encourage those of you that have went through the allocation process, rely on those dollars. to see if that's something that you would like to participate in. The next time that committee is going to meet is next Tuesday, July 18th. They typically have a meeting on Tuesday afternoons towards the end of the day, and they have used that time to do the work of the committee. So like I said, at this point, 2 surveys have went out. Now that we have that information, what we want to really start focusing on is what that process looks like. So I'm gonna hit escape. There we go. I'm gonna stop sharing. So in theory, I've turned, I don't see myself. There I am. Okay. So in the few minutes that's left, does anybody have anything that they want to ask publicly? Thank you, Melanie, in the chat. We are very excited for July 25th as well. It was a lot, I know that. So if nobody has any official questions, the next steps will be that the recording will be put on the website, and we will go ahead and send an email out to everybody that was invited, thanking you for participating. We'll give you a link back to the recording if you'd like to share that with any of the people on your staff. And there will be the last call to volunteer if you're interested in being a part of helping us shape the allocation process going forward. Funded partners, again, you know, I'm not saying don't ever talk to Jean again, that's silly, but I'm just saying, like, from here on out, you'll get all of your communication regarding the mid-year review, invitation to serve on the board, to present to the board through David, and then that's it. There's 26 people, but I see like 4 people nodding, so I'm gonna take that as everybody's okay. Thank you, Emily.
I have one question.
Thank you. I'll send you a gift card for that. I appreciate it.
Presentations to the board. Is that formal PowerPoint? How?
Thank you.
I think David, you said like 15 minutes.
10 to 15 minutes. And again, I don't want people to feel, and I know it's easy for me to say, right? I don't want people to feel pressured. It's not high stakes. It's an opportunity. Like if I've got 22 engaged community members on our board, and they know that we invest in Catholic charities, I want them to know your face, or, you know, I'm hoping the directors will come, right? I think that's where the opportunity for the relationship building is. You know, I want my board to know who's providing these opportunities, and be able to ask you questions and see how we can be helpful. I mean, at the end of the day, this is through my lens, but I believe my board is completely supportive of this. We are of service to you, right? So I want it to be an opportunity not only for you to be able to highlight, here's what we do and why it's important, but I need my board to understand, like, how do we help you do more, right? Okay. The more you do, the more impact there is in the community.
Thank you.
And any other questions? I have other gift cards. My sarcasm doesn't play as well on remote meetings. It's just, I like in person so much better. Thank you, Joe. Okay, so I won't keep you guys any longer. We'll go ahead. We'll get the recording out to everybody if you have any further questions. But
one more live one. When do you anticipate knowing what the mid-year review is going to look like?
So that's our task at hand right now, right? And this is the thing that I would share, and I appreciate you asking that, and I probably should have been more clear on this during the presentation. We recognize that it's going to look different a year from now than it is right now. Right now is going to be just sort of a placeholder to get everybody accustomed to it and sort of test drive something. But we also know that we're already months in, right? And by the time we hit you with it, we're say we need your mid-year review a month from now. I don't want to create chaos and I don't want to create stress. That's not who we are. So, you know, it might just be something up front that's just more a look at your outputs as opposed to outcomes, if you will. Just a quick pulse check, make sure we're all on the same page, and then next year it might look a little bit different. And I really do encourage everyone, like if there's things coming down the pike that make you guys itchy, if there's things that you're hearing or you think you're reading tea leaves that make you nervous about something, don't hesitate to ask. You know, I would rather be able to have a direct conversation with folks and make sure we're all on the same page and feel good about what's happening than having people nervous or thinking, you know, oh, they're changing the funding model. You know, if they open it up, then, you know, some of us are getting kicked out or whatever. I'd rather, like, let's have the conversation so I can figure out how to put people's minds at ease and for people to understand what our motivations are. And I will tell you that the thing that we just keep going back to is we have a commitment to the community to invest the dollars entrusted to us to where there's the greatest need. And that's what we have to do. So on one side, we have to raise as much money as we can so that we can invest where there's the greatest need. Just trying to keep it real simple. All right, Emily, are you going to be at Party at the Park tomorrow? Are you going to be walking by at any point?
I'm not sure. It's actually my anniversary.
Oh, happy anniversary. No, you don't
Thank
do
you.
Party at the Park on your anniversary. I was going to say, I'll bring your gift card to Party in the Park. Just stop by the United Way table. Otherwise, I'll put it in the mail. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, take care.